Good morning, friends. Welcome to the Immanuel 10 at 10. Happy spring break. Sarah's dad and his wife Karen have been visiting us from Michigan the past few days. We enjoyed some warmer weather together and got some tree trimming done around our yard. And yesterday we had a magnificent St. Patrick's Day meal. Sarah is such an awesome cook, and I'm so grateful for that. Well, today and Sunday morning in our adult class, we're going to dig into the last book of the Bible, Revelation. In Greek, the word is apocalypse, which means unveiling. Apocalypse often gets used to describe a huge battle or the end of the world, but this is really more about the unveiling of God's eternal purposes. Revelation was written during a time of Roman oppression of Christians, probably during the reign of Emperor Domitian, who lived from 90, or who ruled, likely around 90 to 95 after the death of Emperor Nero. My Serendipity Bible gives this little introduction to Revelation. It says, apocalyptic writing, which involves the unveiling of future events, was commonly used by Jewish authors at this time in history. Through bizarre images, vivid pictures of death, supernatural creatures, and cryptic language, the writers expressed their hope for a day when judgment would be rendered against all evil powers and peace would be ushered in. Revelation uses this style of writing, but anchors its hope in Jesus' authority as King of Kings. Revelation has been interpreted in a variety of ways over the centuries. However, the book's true purpose is not to arouse speculation about the future. Rather, it is meant to encourage Christians in every age to maintain their faith despite opposition, and to do so in the confidence that they will share Jesus' ultimate victory over all forces that oppose him and his people. Revelation consists of a series of scenes culminating in the triumph of God. Well, how did Revelation get written? There was this man named John, possibly the apostle, who wrote the Gospel of John and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, those letters, or another follower of Jesus by that name. We're not exactly sure. He was on the island of Patmos in the middle of the Aegean Sea, where he'd been imprisoned for telling people about Jesus. While he was praying in the Spirit one Sunday, John had a vision of the risen Christ standing in the middle of 7 lampstands, which symbolized 7 different churches that Jesus told him to write a letter to. These churches were in Asia Minor, which is today the country of Turkey. Jesus gave him specific messages for each of those churches. Now, that's very important to realize this, that the whole book of Revelation is a letter written to particular people in various cities around 90 AD. A lot of people try to read Revelation today as if it was written for people living in North America in the year 2022. But for us to understand the message of Revelation, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the first people to hear it. Now, as we read these little mini letters to each of the churches, we find that they're in all sorts of different situations. Some were being persecuted for their faith in Jesus. They were seen as godless rebels who worshipped someone other than the emperor. So they were out of place in their own culture, facing discrimination, beatings, prison, or even death. Other churches were well off. They were comfortable and rich and tempted to blend into the culture around them by compromising their morals and their faith. Other churches had false teachers who were distorting the truth about Jesus and living in ways that denied him and his teachings. If you think about it, we can see ourselves in the descriptions of these churches. Around the world, some churches are persecuted for their faith. Some Christians are being led astray by false teachers, and others, like many of us here in North America, are well off and comfortable and kind of blend into the culture around us. To each one of these churches, Jesus gave warnings and encouragement to conquer, to persevere in faith. and gave these wonderful promises of reward, that they would be allowed to eat from the tree of life, that they would be given their own names, that they would be able to eat the hidden manna, all these different things. Well, the rest of the book is a series of cycles of warnings and encouragement to persevere, with scenes of worship in between. There are echoes of the Old Testament all over Revelation, although it never quotes the Old Testament directly. Out of 404 verses, 278 of them contain one or more Old Testament allusions. There's lots of echoes and references to the Roman culture as well. Chapters 1 through 3 set the context, and then chapters 4 and 5 are the heart of the book. It's a vision of the throne room of God. Suddenly there John finds himself standing in the presence of God on his throne, and all these elders are standing around and worshiping the one on the throne. It's a lot like ambassadors who would come to Rome and worship Emperor Domitian. People admiringly called him Lord and God. He even had that put on some of his coinage. So Revelation, with this picture, is making a strong claim that it matters who you say is Lord and God. It matters who you give your allegiance to and where you place your trust. The question is, even for us today, to whom or what does your heart cling? That's what Martin Luther said. Whatever you set your heart on, to whatever you look for all good in your life, that is your God. So there in the throne room, a scroll is brought forward with 7 seals on it. And there's this lament that goes up that says no one is able to open the scroll or open its seals. But then John hears a voice that says, "Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah is worthy to open the scroll." And he looked, expecting to see a lion, and instead he saw a lamb who had been slain and yet lived. So this is obviously a symbol of who Jesus is. Jesus isn't covered in fluffy white wool, but he went through a sacrificial death like the Passover lamb who delivered the people from death and slavery in Egypt. In the same way, Jesus delivers us from slavery to sin and death. These symbols, Revelation uses all kinds of symbolic language. They're not a code to decipher. They really engage our imagination. They're not just describing reality, but pushing us deeper to help us see that Jesus' death was not defeat, but victory. So these people say, "You are worthy to take the scroll and open its seals because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth." And so then, John hears this amazing song. He sees thousands upon thousands of angels singing, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise." Many years later, George Frederick Handel used these words and many other passages from Revelation and from Isaiah to craft his Messiah oratorio. So the Lamb begins to open the seals, and after each one of the first seals come the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, as they're often called. The first one has a bow, which would have been a symbol of the Parthian army. They were well known for being mounted archers. This was a threat on the edge of the Roman Empire, kind of looming out there in the distance. The second horseman carries a sword and has the power to cause people to slaughter one another. That's a picture of violence happening in our own communities, where we turn on one another. The third horseman has scales in his hand, and there's this voice saying, a day's wages for a loaf of bread. His threat is the threat of economic uncertainty, the threat to our pocketbooks, inflation, all of the worries that we have about money. And then the fourth horseman is called death and Hades. And that's a picture of our own mortality, our vulnerability. So the Lamb opens all these different seals, and more crazy visions of judgment happen. And then, kind of nestled inside the seven seals, are seven trumpets which are blown. It's another cycle of terrible visions, kind of like nesting dolls, one inside the other. And just when the threats become unbearable, suddenly you end up back in worship, in the throne room of God, knowing that the Lord is in control. It's a call, the whole book is a call to repentance and faith. It's like a series of spirals that are heading somewhere. They lead to Jesus and the new creation. I'm so happy to be able to dig into Revelation with you again. We had been working our way through it in early 2020 until the pandemic shut everything down just before we got to the end, the glorious end of the book. So this Sunday morning and next Sunday morning at 8:30 in the social hall, we'll watch the Bible Project's videos on Revelation together, and we'll talk about how the book speaks to us today. Hope to see you there and at worship at 9:30. Have a great weekend.